We're honored today to welcome a 1963 graduate of Mercer Island High School who went on to Harvard and Harvard Law. Doug MacDonald is wrapping up a distinguished career of public service that began in Africa in a tour with the Peace Corps. He's been Washington State Secretary of Transportation since April 2001. Today, he's here to talk to us about the future of transportation in our region. Fellow Rotarians, please welcome the Honorable Doug MacDonald.
Oh, thank you. I did good getting up those stairs. I crashed my bicycle last night about 7:30. And, ibuprofen is great stuff. And bicycles play an important part in transportation. Bicycles and potholes don't go together, so we better fix the potholes. I love doing Rotary. I did the Edmonds Daybreaker Rotary yesterday, which is a considerably different group from this. But Rotary is always the same. And the best thing about it is you just get to go talk to regular people about ordinary things. The challenge for a speaker at Rotary is the time limits. I mean, there's no kidding around with this business, and so you think you're going to share a few thoughts, and then a few less, and pretty soon you say, you better talk pretty fast, so you're going to get anything done at all, you're going to have to get at it. And I actually, as was mentioned, when Dave Endicott asked me to come, I was still the Secretary of Transportation in perpetuity. Between then and now, I decided I was going to go on to some other things, of which the most important is to leave Olympia, which is a wonderful place, and those of you who get down there once in a while to visit, I'm sure enjoy it. But I'm moving to Seattle. I came home to Washington State 6 years ago from Boston. Now it's time for me to really get home, and so I figured enough of Olympia, time to come to Seattle, and I'm looking for reassignment, so you might keep that in mind. I got a couple of ideas. Of course, roads are very, very interesting, and actually I enjoyed the run-up to this. And Brad, I got to warn you, if you think that you've seen traffic congestion and you've just seen mist, you wait till you try to get someplace in February when it's raining. It's a problem. We got some serious traffic problems around here, and we'll come to that in a minute. But have you ever thought about the most amazing thing about traffic, which is that it works at all? I mean, if you actually were to take a cross-section of all the different people we put in a car in the morning, and at 60 miles an hour, they all manage to merge and to pass and to get to where they're going, and they all travel the same speed, and more often than not, they don't run into each other. I mean, there's really an amazing socialization process that goes on in traffic, and sometimes I don't think we give it enough credit, and sometimes I think it would be better if we looked at how we drove mostly together, mostly with good sense, most of the time, and we applied some of those principles to planning and building our transportation system. We'd probably be way better off. I want to do a couple of quick and somewhat serious things. I don't get a lot of chances like this to wrap up in just a few minutes of 6 years that I've spent doing this. I want to take you through a very quick thumbnail of what we've done in the last 6 years, and then share with you a couple thoughts about what's going to be important coming in the future. There's a very short thumbnail history of transportation in the Central Puget Sound region. It runs like this. In the 60s and the 70s, we built a great system of roads, largely with the help of the federal government. We did smart things like figure that you only needed 2 lanes through the convention center and other bright ideas because we had a fairly limited vision of what this was all for. We got the system in place, and then we decided to take a break. Now, that break led for a while, and it coincided with a couple of things that were going on in the larger picture. One was a number of people were deciding that cars and roads weren't such a good thing. And another thing that happened, this sometimes in the late 70s and the 80s, was people decided that public expenditure wasn't a good thing. And if you put those two things together, you got a prescription for doing nothing. And we sat in Central Puget Sound and in a lot of other places around the country. Our problems are hardly unique. In the 80s and the 90s, deciding or believing that we could use the historic system and it would work forever, that we're not going to have to do a new and continuing lift to have a transportation system that would work for us in the future. And that was a prescription for the mess that we found ourselves in and that we're still trying to work out of. The bottom came after some of the recognition was made of some of the problems we faced with Referendum 51, just after I came here in 2001, when Referendum 51, a proposal at the ballot to do something about this, was resoundingly defeated, a recognition of the lack of confidence in the system and the prospects in both respects. Following that, there was a coming together of groups in the community, business leadership, legislators, first one, now a second governor, saying that we're going to have to do something about this. And we saw remarkable things happen. And by the way, they're quite unique in this state. We are leaders in this. In the so-called nickel package was passed by the legislature in 2003. Some projects were begun. And emboldened, the legislature then passed 9 more cents in 2005. That went to the ballot. And it was the conventional wisdom everywhere that at the ballot, voters would reject that and go back and play on the old paradigm. To everyone's astonishment, and to some of our delight, what happened in Initiative 912 was quite extraordinary. The people get it, that we are going to have to fix this. And so Initiative 912 was defeated, and in fact quite resoundingly. And so more projects are begun and more funding is at hand, and progress is starting to be made on digging out of the hole. There's more to come. And this fall there will be another ballot proposition to do more, both on the road system and in the transit system, and the judgment and the verdict is still out about how voters will respond to that. But I want to take that step past that and think about what the future will look like for transportation in our region after the ballot proposition this fall, almost regardless of, I think totally regardless of how it comes out. First, we have a platform of good news on which to build continuing progress on transportation. The most important thing is that we are moving. Now, some of you may say, I don't know if this is the kind of forward progress I want to see because I used to be able to drive around on congested highways. Now I drive around on congested highways and there's barrels everywhere. In fact, this is a sign of better things to come. And one of the things that I'm particularly pleased of, and I think that we're getting good recognition for from the community, is that the projects that the legislature promised people would happen are in fact happening. I've reported to the governor at the end of March that in the so-called nickel program and the 13-cent program from 2005, where we were given 300 some odd projects to build over the next 15 years, we have, as of March 30th, completed 80 of those projects. The legislative budget for those 80 projects was $636 million. And we finished the first 80 for $638 million. And any of you who are private sector executives or public sector executives or bankers or anything know that to do $636 million for $638 million was a heck of a job, and we are very proud of that, and we think the public needs to know that. But there's more. There's hundreds of other projects in the routine program, little paving projects, all kinds of things. This is all over the state. And we have also demonstrated the ability to do big projects, of which the flagship is really the new Tacoma Narrows Bridge, which we'll open in a couple of weeks, and which is an $800 million project. It's one of the leading highway construction projects going on today in the United States, on time and on budget, and a wonderful feat of engineering, which is also going to start to solve some very significant transportation problems in that part of the region. There are similar projects, particularly using new delivery technologies like design build up on I-5 in Everett and on I-405. And the fact that we can get the projects done is a huge step, a score in our favor as we seek public confidence to keep going. This is a very fragile environment, however, because we are threatened, like everybody else is doing construction today, by inflationary price increases for circumstances quite out of our control. And we will be, the reason I'm advertising $638 million to do $636 million of projects is we or anybody else is going to be lucky to do that in the next biennium. So this is a problem we all understand and we're going to have to work with. The bad news is that the problem of fixing transportation is a marathon. It is not a sprint, and it is not for the short-winded. A couple of things we have to focus on, and the first and most important question is this. Transportation is very important. It has to work. Pretty much people agree on that, but taking that to the bank and really acting on it is something that we as a community are still getting ourselves together on. Transportation is critical to how we get to our jobs. It's critical to how freight moves. It's critical to how the groceries get to the grocery store. It's critical to emergencies. It's critical to the quality of life. It's critical to every single piece of our community and our economy. And a non-functioning transportation system will, in time, mean non-functioning economies and non-functioning communities. This is a lift we have to sign up for, and that means people like us today, all of you, not transportation experts, not the head of the Transportation Commission or the Transportation Committee, but regular people looking at all of this and figuring out what you can do to bring your support to the program. So, what's the problem? The problem is simply this. The problem is the good news of growth. We will, in the next 20 years, the planning period for which these very investments are being planned, when they will be delivered into the road system and the transit system, we're expecting the Puget Sound region to grow from a population of 3 million people to a population of 4 million people. We're expecting the job base to grow by 600,000 jobs. And for you who like transportation statistics, we today in the Puget Sound region take about 15 million trips a day. And in 2028, we will take approximately 20 million trips a day. So add that to what we have on the roads today, and add that to every piece of good news and hope that you've been told about in the programs that are coming, and you will quickly conclude that it's not going to be enough. This is a very, very tough message. It's a good message because the future of our community lies in strong economies and strong communities and growth. But it means that we're going to have to continue to work on the transportation system. And what I really want to talk about today is a couple of ways of thinking about that, which I think are new and that are going to become very prominent in the next few years to come. The first of those is that the context for transportation has changed. And I'm going to give you 2 or 3 quick examples of why I think that's so. First, a little matter of politics. A lot of what we're driving on today was built with federal funds through federal highway programs. It's not going to happen again. And the resource to both maintain and rehabilitate the transportation system we already have and build new facilities are going to have to come from our own community. And how to do that is going to be a big lift. We're going to get help from influential people who work for us in Washington. We're going to get our fair share of a federal pie. But for a whole bunch of reasons to talk about some other time, that federal pie is not going to get larger for transportation. The second problem is energy. You are, and we're in the middle of a transformation about how transportation and energy interact. I don't know where gas prices are going to stop. I know they're going to go up and down, but my assumption is, and I think you're all saying the same, they're going to go up and up and up. And so what that means for how the transportation system works, both for our community and our own lives, is going to be some very profound change. It's going to change the nature of the vehicles we drive or use, and it's going to change the nature of the systems that will serve those vehicles well. We are not going to be able to think about the future transportation system just trying to build and create more of what we have already done, and energy is a huge reason for that. The next contextual change lies in the relationship of transportation and the environment. For a long time, transportation has operated in the sort of understanding that transportation and the environment were antagonistic. Roads were bad for the environment was stopping roads from getting built. Somehow these two issues were at odds with each other. One of the things I found, and I thought about it very much, was that if you looked out at the people you were talking to, or Rotary, or any other place in the state of Washington, you basically found people who wanted 2 things. They wanted a better transportation system, and universally, they wanted a better environment. Those 2 things in the minds of the people we're supposed to be working for weren't supposed to be in opposition, and our job is to figure out how to bring them together. to make transportation projects that work for the environment and make the environmental issues around transportation manageable in the transportation system so that we can have a better environment and a better transportation system. This requires some new ways of thinking, and I think that amongst all of you, some of that has to come. A couple of things about the environment that are going to affect transportation. Number one, if you haven't heard of it, is the entire question of climate change, which everybody was debating 2 years ago, but nobody is debating today. We talked at the table about how we're reducing our carbon footprint. If you'd have gone home, a year ago and started talking about your carbon footprint, even your kids wouldn't know what you were talking about. And now we actually have some feeling of what this is all about and don't think that that isn't going to affect what our transportation system is going to look like in the future. The second, and it's an old saw, is that transportation and land use issues are very connected. And one of the ways I want to drive that home to people is that as we catch our vision of what we want the Puget Sound region to look like in the future, with a better transportation system, stronger communities, and a stronger economy, we are also putting on that agenda that we, as custodians and stewards and people who enjoy this special place in the world, can symbolize our commitment to that by saying that we will not despoil Puget Sound, but we will restore and save Puget Sound as a symbol of what we mean in this community to build a future of ourselves. The future of Puget Sound and the future of automobiles are not unconnected. Exactly how they are connected and what it all means is something I think we have to do a lot more thinking about as part of a larger environmental agenda. But as you hear and think about the importance to our community of our relationship to Puget Sound and how it, as our place, should look and be, consider that you're also going to be thinking about transportation, cars, and land use. Now, that's some of the contextual changes that are going to be in front of us through the next few years. Let me talk for a moment about what I think are some new imperatives for the transportation system. The largest of the imperatives is to make our transportation system more efficient. Our transportation system is a joke from an efficiency measure. Now, you all know that in one way or another, but I'm going to tell you why, for me, it's past argument. And it's this. I'll use 405. You can take any highway you're used to and familiar with as an example. 405 is a nice highway, and it was designed by highway engineers who know that that highway should carry 2,000 cars per lane per hour when people are driving on it. Every single day, because of congestion and because of us and how we drive, up and back, looking at the person changing a tire, switching back and forth. We are such terrible drivers, but it's just human nature, that because of congestion, we drop the actual efficiency of 405 to about 1,100 cars a lane mile every afternoon when we need it the most. That's crazy. Can you imagine that we would build a water system that when we needed the water, we'd shrink all the pipes by half? And so one of the things we have to keep absolutely in mind is how to use the existing transportation system more efficiently. We are doing some of that at WashDOT with things we and others around the country are doing. You've seen our new incident response trucks trying to get people out of the way. You've seen improvements in how we deal with information, from getting people over the pass to telling people where the traffic backups are. You've seen expansions of transit in the HOV lanes, which are all, at the end of the day, about how to move people efficiently. So we're doing lots of things in this area. But we are not doing the key things that are available to us in the future. And it's very ironic because you ask yourself in what direction should you turn? And the answer is obvious. Your cell phone can give you the answer. Technology has the ability to change the way we do old things. Many of the highway systems that we are thinking about, we're thinking about building and remain to be built, were first laid out in people's minds when people were trying to figure out between MCI and AT&T who was going to own the long-distance business for rotary telephones. We got to get way past rotary telephones in transportation. And we live in a place where the very top brains and companies of technology, not just one or two, are here, and we have to reach out and say, where are those technological breakthroughs that can make transportation work better? Some of them are coming in terms of better vehicle systems. The airplane, you congratulate the guy, thanks for the nice landing, that was great. The guy hasn't landed the airplane in 15 years. The computer lands the airplane because it can fly the airplane better than he can. Its reaction time is quicker. And I shouldn't be trying to figure out what the right distance is behind the person in front of me who seems to be driving a little erratically as they make a lane change. There needs to be a system in my computer that controls the accelerator and my brake and maintains my spacing distance and zips that traffic along and doesn't pay any attention if I look at the crash on the side of the road at all anyway. And those systems are coming. And we have systems in the sky to figure out how people are going to drive better and where they should go. What does that technology bring? And this is the word I'm not giving you on this on the behalf of our governor. I'm not speaking for a single politician. I'm not speaking for myself as a public official, but just as an observer of all this. Technology allows us to do an extraordinary American thing. It allows us to bring the law of price, supply, and demand to how we use roads and how we attack that problem of peak use. Not everybody has to be on the road at 10 minutes after 8, and the value of that to everybody isn't the same. Everywhere in our American economy, we use the law of supply and demand and price so that we don't build too much and we pay for what we need because demand brings it out through price. The word is tolls. You didn't hear it here, and I didn't say it. But think about tolls as doing three things. Think about tolls as, first of all, giving us a new way of looking at it so that you aren't asked 6 years from now to vote for a 95-cent gas tax, but we can actually put the use and the paying for the system together. Think about the message, the way that tolls can be set. This is being done all over the country and the world, and we have to do it here, where the price goes up when too many of you want to come, and the price goes down, and we can move some of that traffic to the time when the roads are empty. So think about tolls as a mechanism for efficiency. And think about tolls as a way to put money together to build a transportation system that does all of the things we need. Some transit, some highways, some other things. Some of these things we are on the verge of today. And as you look ahead, and you as citizens are trying to think about what the future of transportation looks like in this region, ask that the people like us who work for you are doing the things we've tried to do, accountability and project delivery, and are going to do more of the things we all need, which is looking to the future with more efficient transportation systems, better balanced transportation systems, and transportation systems that embrace the ability of technology to help us move better on the roads. Thank you.
Here's your folder. That was fabulous. That was fabulous. As an economist, I can only say, bless you, sir. And now we have time for a few questions. So leap to your feet, and Faith and Larry have the microphones.
Let's amplify your suggestion of tolls. You're speaking now of tolls that would be at different rates, and we could do that electronically on stickers on our windshields. But in other words, at say 6 to 8, it'll be one rate. In the middle of the day, it'll be another rate. Yeah. Another thing that our highways could do and don't do is we could put more cars on them if we maintained a slower speed and a gap between. And that can be done electronically as well.
Absolutely. I mean, yes. Now, how is all this going to work? Well, we don't know the answer to that. But yes, the toll goes up and down depending on whether the system needs you or wants you to go another time. But the key point, there's a great point here, which transportation engineers know, but we can share with people. When we run 405 at the optimal speed and the most cars go through a stripe down the middle of the road in an hour, the cars are all moving at about 48 miles an hour. They are not moving at 60 miles an hour. Imagine if I could promise that the 520 bridge would move at 48 miles an hour all day long, every day. People would buy that so fast. The myth of freeway speed, you don't need to move at 60. You need to move at that very speed he's talking about where the maximum number of cars most comfortably drive. And that actually is not the free road. It's everybody moving together in that wonderfully socialized process where people are comfortable at 48.
Great. Yeah.
So when do you expect us to be able to drive on a new bridge across 520?
I don't know.
Good answer.
It's not really a terribly well-kept secret that I'm a fairly impatient guy. And And I think we're marking time right now. I think some of the processes that are in place should help break some of the logjam, but we got to get going. And today, until we make some decisions about what that program is going to look like, the size of the bridge, the day of the bridge is uncertain. I think people should be very uncomfortable about that. And I think one of the things that you've got to demand is that the processes that have been put in place for the next year to get that decision made will work. It's a huge issue. The viaduct's the same. I haven't mentioned anything about either of them because I'm not very happy with the progress that's been made, so if you feel impatience, fuel it. Ask public officials to get these decisions made. We must have the projects.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you for your leadership and service. And we especially appreciate you taking the time to share your insights, which brings us to the very last pretty good rule. I felt a little self-conscious publishing this, but some people asked for it, so there it is. Sometimes, this may be the most important rule of all, sometimes you've got to break the rules, especially when confronted with a no-win scenario. I don't believe in a no-win scenario. When necessary to break the rules, ask forgiveness and press on. See you next week. We are adjourned.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from Enterprise Seattle. For over 35 years, Enterprise Seattle has provided client-based economic development services to businesses throughout King County and its 39 cities. More information on Enterprise Seattle and how they help businesses grow and prosper can be found at www.enterpriseseattle.org. And by First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.